Welcome, everyone. I'm so glad to have everyone here at this special occasion. It's really a joy to be with all of you. I want to just speak for about 5 minutes here about why we're here and hopefully why you're here. And I want to organize my talk really around one word, and that word is the word preparation. So preparation is something that we all know is important in some sense, right? We all know that you need to prepare before you're going to do something. So hopefully when you go to see a doctor, you're going to a doctor who prepared himself or herself by going to college, going to medical school, doing a residency. And I'm guessing that none of us wants to go under the knife from somebody who is unprepared, right? Pretty obvious. Similarly, when we think about disciplines like farming, you're not going to go out and just throw seed willy-nilly and just do whatever you want. You got to prepare the land. You got to plan. You got to do all these kinds of things. And it's so simple and it's so for granted that we take this in virtually all domains of life, and yet we generally do a poor job at some of the most important things in life. So I remember when I have 6 children, I remember when we brought our very first child home in the car seat, and I remember as we were walking out the door of the hospital thinking, I can't believe they're letting us walk out the door with the baby. We have no idea what we're doing. This is like so scary, and I feel completely, my wife and I both said we feel completely unprepared to be a parent. Who tells you how to be a parent? And yet being a parent, I think we would all agree, is one of the most important jobs in life. And similarly, when you think about what does it mean to be prepared as a human being, and when I say being prepared as a human being, I don't just mean academics. I mean preparation in spiritual life. How does one start to learn evangelism? How does one learn how to relate to a group effectively? How does one learn how to lead, to start things, to organize? There's like so many really important things, and generally speaking, we are unprepared. There's a quote that it's probably apocryphal, we don't know, that's attributed at least to Abraham Lincoln. Some of you have heard it, I'm sure. And he says that, you all know that he used to cut trees, right? And he used to say that if you give me 6 hours to cut a tree, I'm going to spend the first 4 sharpening my axe. And he recognized that, the temptation is to get in there, chop, 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 right? But you would actually do way better to spend the first 4 hours, in Lincoln's estimation, just sharpening, just getting ready. And I don't know how many of you think about this, but think about Jesus' life for a moment. So we all know that Jesus started his ministry when he was approximately 30 years old. And we know very, very little about what went on in years 0 to 30. We have a little glimmer with him in the temple when he's roughly 12, but we know very little of what was going on, right? It's kind of an interesting question. What was Jesus actually doing when he was 26? What was he doing when he was 23? What was he doing? And the picture that I have of him is a little bit like the picture of an iceberg. So we all know that the vast majority, say that more than 90% of the mass and volume of an iceberg is actually underneath the surface of the water, right? You're seeing just a small portion of it when you see what looks massive, but there's way more underneath it. And what I think Jesus was doing in years 24, in years 13, in years 28, there was an iceberg being built. And that iceberg was the basis for his ability to go out and teach like he did, pray like he did, heal like he did. And we all want those last 3 years, and we're all like amazed, like, wow, how did you do that, Jesus? How did you speak with such authority? How did you do all the miracles? But we don't sufficiently think enough about the preparatory years that made him able to get to that place. I have talked to many people over the years. I would say especially, it's funny, your definition of older changes when you get older, right? So I'm in my mid-40s now, and my definition of young is younger than me. So if you're younger than 40, you're a young person. But I've talked to many older people over the years, and consistently, I would say one of the number one challenges that I've heard from people is they say something along the lines of, I wish I could go and learn X, Y, and Z, and study this, and do this, and fill out my life with all these things. But now I'm in my 50s, or my 60s, or my 70s, and I just don't know how I'm going to fit it in, because I've got a family, I've got all these responsibilities, etc. And a lot of people will say, I long for my college years where I had the opportunity to read and study and spend focused time in whatever I was doing. And so that's certainly my contention as well. So why am I talking about preparation? I will make the statement to you that the years between, let's call it 18 and mid-30s or so, should be the years of probably the most potent preparation, particularly in stepping out as a human being. And I look today at where the church is at, and so often, again, I see people going out there trying to chop without that preparation that they've had before. And the consequences are unfortunate. I believe that the vast majority, I was sharing this with Brother Paul and some others, the vast majority of what we see in terms of failures with church divisions, ineffectiveness in evangelism, all kinds of problems are due to inadequate preparation. People reinventing the wheels, people not stopping, thinking, learning, because fundamentally preparation is about humility. Preparation says, I'm not ready yet. I need to be equipped. I need to be made more able to accomplish the things that I'm going to do. I need to build out that iceberg so that when it finally emerges, there's a secure foundation on it. One of the things that I think you will find in our vision and what we are doing here is you will find a very clear picture of what it is to be a well-rounded Christian human being. And I will say that I have massive regrets about my education. There were a lot of good things in it, but a lot of negative things in it as well. And the stakes here are high. The stakes are enormous. We, standing here in 2018, almost 2019, we need a whole generation, a whole army of young people who are ready to take their place and advance the kingdom of God. I believe it can happen so quickly if we are prepared. I believe it can happen in our generation. And I tell my children often, my dream is by the time I die to see Jesus come back again, because there will be, as he says very clearly in Matthew 24, the gospel of the kingdom will be preached to all nations as a witness, and then the end will come. You know, Coca-Cola has been able to take their message to every last jungle and corner of India. You look at Google and Apple and these companies, they figured out how to do it because guess what? They prepared. They studied. They put in hard work and vision and discipline and all those things, the very things that we are lacking. And I believe what we have here is an opportunity to create, as I said, a whole generation of young people on fire for the Lord who are ready to go out and, as we have on our banner, to equip Jesus' peaceful revolution, which the world is waiting for. And I think all of us would agree with that. So we are incredibly excited. I'm going to leave you with a quote here from an individual who said that we all suffer one of two regrets, or one of two pains. What are the two pains? The two pains are the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. You're going to experience one or the other, either the pain of discipline or the pain of regret. Now, we've just had a great semester, I think, at Sattler, and I think a lot of you felt a lot of pain, but it was a good pain. It was the pain of discipline, and you all know, you've heard my pearls about this, about how you get to grow as a human being, which involves pain. And I am very confident that the pain that we have endured together as a staff and student body is the good pain that's going to set us up for amazing things. That iceberg is being built right now. I have no doubt that it is being built. And there is a network of incredibly engaging, exciting young people that I know are going to be the future of the kingdom, the future of what we are aiming for. And I will say one of the things that I'm the most pleased about, I've spent many years in higher education, and I've been at good schools. I will say that our students are way more grateful. You know, one of the things that it irked me when I was at other schools, people were just so entitled. They complained about every last thing. Our students are way more grateful. They're caring, they're compassionate, they're excited to go out and use their talents to serve our Lord. And I can't wait to have another group here to be mentored by us, as well as our students who are already here, and to continue to build this iceberg. The possibilities that we can't even conceive of how great the potential is that we have even in this room today. And I hope that you can see it with me with the eye of faith. So with that, we're going to transition now into a panel. And I believe that Brother Zach is going to be, are you emceeing?
Yeah.
You are emceeing.
I want to introduce the panel MC to you. The panel is Sattler's Dean. His name is Michael Miller. Michael, if you are here, would you mind coming up and maybe introducing yourself and then inviting the panel members, you know who you are, to start making your way here as well.
All right. Well, my name is Michael Miller. I am the Dean. I'm the Chief Accreditation and Academic Officer of Sattler College. So I deal with all things related to academics and accreditation. And if our panel will come forward, we want to give you the opportunity to ask questions. I know you have burning questions about what college is like and what happens here. So parents, students, visitors, anybody who would like to ask a question.
They're starting with introductions, right?
Yes. We want you to chime in, but first we're going to introduce our panel. And if you'll just tell us who you are, and as students, if you tell us where you're from and what you're majoring in.
Yeah, so my name is Zach Johnson. I am the Director of Operations here at Sattler College, and I also teach statistics and data science.
I'm Bryant Miller. I'm from Kansas, and I'm a human biology major.
I'm Joy Weiler. I'm from Pennsylvania, and I'm also a human biology major.
I'm Timothy Miller. I'm from Florida, and I'm a biblical and religious studies major.
All right.
And we should also add that Timothy is married, which is one of the reasons why we wanted to have him on the panel. So some of you are married and want to know what it's like to go to college. Married, both Joy and Brian are single, so we have a great perspective here. And Timothy, who also has a child and expecting number 2 soon.
All right. Who's going to be first? What questions do you have? All right. Well, I'll prime the pump just to get you going here. Let me ask one of the students, whoever would like to take this one. What does a typical weekday look like for you?
I can take that.
Take that.
So the days are, especially during the week, are fairly regimented for me. I think all of us have got a lot of good instruction about how to plan and schedule our days so that we can maximize what we get done and not get behind in our work. So sometimes there's a bit of a gap between my preparation and my completion, but I try to keep a fairly tight schedule. And I actually have a couple of side things that I do as well, so that I have my scheduled class time, my homework time, and then I'm also taking piano lessons, so I have a scheduled piano practice time, and I go to the gym every weekday to stay sane. So that's kind of what my day looks like. It's pretty full. It's good. I usually have a little bit of time to socialize around meal times. Is when I prioritize hanging out and having fun. So.
Do either of you have anything to add to that?
So I guess I can give a little different perspective. I mean, it's not a lot different, but since I'm married, I actually live a little bit north of here, about 6 miles. And so I usually try to be down here around 7. The earliest class doesn't start till 8:30, but that is golden homework time for me first thing in the morning, because having a family when I get home evenings, I've tried as hard as I can to not have much homework to do evenings. Hasn't always worked out perfectly, but so usually I do a lot of homework first thing in the morning, have around 2 classes on average a day, and then can do a lot of homework throughout the day in between classes and meal times. And then I'm usually headed home around 5 to 5:30 to get supper with the family. That's what an average day looks like for me.
Very good. Anything to add to that, Joy? No? All right. Any other questions? I'd like to hear your question. Yes, sir.
So what attracted you / was the deciding factor to come to a brand spanking new school? There wasn't a lot of student testimonials yet.
One of the reasons that, maybe not because it's a new school, but because I came to Sattler specifically, was I had college experience elsewhere. I went through a year of college at another college and was looking for something different than what I experienced before, in terms of how my faith was going to be affected and what impact I could make through the college experience. And Sattler really answered a lot of those questions for me and was definitely what I was looking for. So that was what made me come, not because it was a new college. That was something that I was a little concerned about, but because of what they were standing for and what they were pushing as values.
Any other questions?
My wife and I met at Millersville University. We both stayed at home, participated in our local congregations while we went to college. Give us a perspective of that versus moving 16 hours away from home and being in Boston where it's more expensive and having a different pros and cons with it.
So obviously there's some disadvantages to not being close to home. Financial is going to be a big one. Although they have done a fantastic job at making Sattler as affordable, I think, as it can possibly be. The staff here have been really incredible in working, I know with myself, and I think I've heard that same thing from other students, of trying to make it work financially, especially for students. They're really committed to making it affordable. And then as far as the church goes, that's also something that we've been really blessed as a family to have. We've been part of one of the followers of the Way congregations here. And obviously it's going to be different for different people what exactly their church life looks like here, but I feel very good about the situation we have and the people we get to interact with on a weekly basis at church. So I think there is good options, both financially and spiritually, that they're providing for students.
All right. Any other questions?
Can I add a little bit to what Timothy said? And I don't think there's necessarily a right or wrong to. It's a great question that Brother Clayton asked there. I will say that there's pros and cons with staying at home versus moving away. The main pros that I would see of coming to an environment like Boston is you're going to have just a very different experience than you've had before. And in that experience, anytime you have change, there's opportunity for growth and learning new things. So one of the things and one of the reasons why we're here, and one of the contentions that I have is that particularly for those who want to grow in evangelism and discipleship, there's no place better than a large city to go to, just because there's so many open, hungry people. About a month or two ago, we had a baptism of a individual from China who came in through our English as a second language center that Marlon here runs. And there's hopefully a pipeline of people right behind that are going to follow in that person's footsteps. Also kind of an atheist Buddhist background from China. And we have way more people here than we can possibly know what to do with in terms of ministry. My wife and I, we look at our calendars, we try once a week to look at them, and we're always like, wow, we want to meet with a list of 20 people long, and we've got like one slot to do that with. And we never had that problem when we lived in a rural setting before, where we pretty quickly exhausted the pool of open people. And so here you have a situation that is very much like Jesus says, the harvest is plentiful, but laborers are few. And one of my hopes is that everybody who comes will be a laborer. And whether it's through ESL or through church or through what have you, they will actually get their shoulder behind it. And when I was in college, it took me a few years to figure out how to do it, but I was able to lead actually two people to the Lord by the time I was a senior. And to go through that whole experience from start to finish, finding someone, learning how to share the gospel, learning how to disciple, watching them baptized, I think that this is the age to learn that. Like, it is, you will probably be as effective now as you will be at any other time period in life, just because people are more moldable, it's easier to form relationships, etc. And so I think there's a lot of advantages for people who are going to consider coming to a large city and getting that experience of just all the diversity and people and languages. And maybe some of you who live at IGH could talk about some of that as well, because you're getting that right now. IGH is International Guest House, which is where our single students live.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, there are so many opportunities. People who are more open or receptive than I've ever experienced, and being in a situation like that is, I think, been formative for me, and also provided me with a lot of opportunities to not only share my faith, but recognize that how I live impacts other people. When I lived at home in a rural community, and mostly interacted with fellow church members, I didn't have quite as clear a picture of how much my actions impacted those around me and influenced those around me. And now, when I'm interacting with people on a daily basis that don't know the Lord or are watching how I live and asking questions about why I do the things I do, it really has kind of hit me between the eyes sometimes, realizing that everything I do makes a big difference and that my impact is more profound than I could have ever had at home, at least in my immediate circles. So yeah, there are so many opportunities, so many open people. It's kind of blown me away.
Yes, sir.
So I was talking to Zach a little earlier. There are opportunities for students to take dual credit type programs through high school, so they can come through high school and have their Associate of Arts degree when they graduate. When I talked to Zach about that, he stated that they're looking more for four-year students so that as far as the discipleship program. What is Sattler doing intentionally with a disciple? Is it a written out discipleship program of sorts? What is the discipleship program, and how does that look fleshed out?
Great. Well, so I'll open up. So our discipleship program starts your freshman year. We call them journey groups. And what it looks like is you are broken down into a small group. Our biggest group is 3 students for every faculty or staff or journey group leader. And once a week we meet for an hour and a half, and we are actually reading through a discipleship curriculum that Sattler has put together that lasts the course of your time here at Sattler. And what that's aimed at doing, and it's hard to wrap up in a single statement, but your time at college is supposed to be a time of spiritual growth, not a time where you're throwing everything away, throwing your morals away to walk out of. And I think if anybody has surveyed the college scene on average, that's sort of what it has turned into. So we want to have the opposite experience here, where our discipleship groups meet once a week, and we're asking each other questions, getting into sort of the nitty-gritty of our spiritual lives, our prayer lives. Are you fervent in the word, prayer, and fasting? Our family lives. How were you with your spiritual and your blood family this week? Our morality lenses. Did you look at anything foolish, immoral, pornographic? And we're checking in with each other. And finally, we're also checking, hey, were you a faithful witness for Christ? And so over the course of our journey groups, we're holding each other accountable and pushing each other forwards. And by the time of 4 years structured with that, and then also leading future students in, it sort of is part of this discipleship pipeline that we really think a solid 4 years surrounded by solid people is going to give you the spiritual muscles that you need after that. I'm sure, does anyone want to add on to that?
Okay, so yeah, this is a big part of what we're about. So I firmly believe that, and I'm a father of 6, soon to be 7, I would way rather my child work at a gas station and make minimum wage and love God than that person be some super successful doctor with a Nobel Prize and be apathetic towards God. So the most important thing that we want to cultivate is a heart for God, a heart to serve, and there's a lot to get equipped and prepared, as I was just mentioning before, to that point. So just to give you a little bit of flavor, this past semester we spent the first month and a half just talking about and reading through a curriculum on humility. What does it mean to be humble? It's the foundational virtue of Christianity. Then for the men, we did different things for men and women, but for the men, we looked at how do you overcome pornography? You know, there's this closet problem that's out there of pornography, and we want to have zero of our students who have this problem by the time first year is done, or certainly by senior year. And by doing the accountability and all those things, we are gonna get there. I have no doubt, and I think we've already made massive headway in that area. We spent time looking at Hudson Taylor and how he prepared himself to be an effective worker for the kingdom by developing his prayer life and self-denial, with a bunch of things relating to that. The reason I say all that is that this is less of an institution where you come in, you take a class, and you go home, right? That's not why we're here. We're not here just to crank out classes and spit people out who have learned X, Y, and Z. That's a part of it, and that's important. And I taught a biology class. I love biology, and I think it's really important to learn those things well. But it has to sit on a foundation of who's Jesus? Who are we? What does it mean to be a human being that is made in God's image, flourishing in His image? And so, for that reason, the journey groups, and the discipleship's really woven through the whole of the college experience, not just the journey groups there. And we pray in our classes together. We have these tea times. We sing together every day, as you saw, and we have a lot of conversations. People come to our homes. There's a lot that goes on, and it's incredibly important. And that's why we've had some hesitation about going into maybe a more typical model, which is maybe more of a vendor of classes. And again, there's a role for that some institutions have, but we don't see ourselves as just being a vendor of classes.
Yes, ma'am.
Just to sort of piggyback off of that, because I totally get, and that's why I love the four-year model, but there are some students who are taking early classes, so would it be possible, maybe even not now, but coming in the future, that like even Comp 1 is like a classic class that kids take in high school?
Sure.
That has dual credit. Could it just lighten the load so you'd have more time?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, and that's something that we will almost certainly implement. And students who come in who have had, it'll be rare that people will have learned biblical languages and things like that in this way. We have a unique way of teaching, but we will have provisions for people to go exempt. We're not trying to make people go things just for the sake of doing it. So if someone's well equipped, yeah, they don't need to repeat it.
All right. Any other questions?
I was wondering if you could speak to accreditation and ability to go on to grad school after?
Certainly. Well, we have just started out, and no school starts accredited. You do have to have state approval to grant degrees, and we do have approval from the state of Massachusetts to grant baccalaureate degrees. Now, on top of that is a peer review process of accreditation. And there's different ways you can be accredited. There's national accreditation, and there's regional accreditation. And we are pursuing that. Now again, you can't start accredited because you have to have classes going, you have to have a process going for them to review. So we've started, and now we start the accreditation process of documenting what we do and making that known to these peer review groups who will come in. They send site teams, they see what we're doing, make sure we're doing what we say we're doing. And ultimately, all accreditation, whether it's regional accreditation or national accreditation, by federal law, everything's driven by mission. Are you fulfilling your mission? What's the mission of your institution? Are you doing it? And you have to prove that you're doing what you say you're doing. And so, and the law specifically says that accreditors must honor the religious mission of religious colleges. So they have to honor our mission, and our mission is definitely a religious mission. We want to, advance the kingdom of God. That's why we're here. And so that obviously we're an educational institution, so we have an educational mission that's part of that. But we do those things, then they come and review to make sure that we're actually doing what we say we're doing. And so we have begun that process. It's a lengthy process. I can't tell you exactly how long it'll take because there's a lot of steps. Some of it depends on their review and how long it takes them to do their review. Certainly we want to have this done by the time our first class graduates. We want to have that accomplished by that point. One of the standards of accreditation, the standards that they hold you to, is called the institutional integrity. You have to show integrity in everything that you do. One of the mainstays of integrity is not promising people that you're going to be accredited, because you don't know that, and they would consider that false advertising and lying if you said, oh yeah, it's going to happen in 4 years. I can't say that as a matter of integrity. I can tell you, I came here to do this. This is why I'm here. These students, are depending upon me to accomplish that. And I have a moral duty to make sure it happens. And I'm going to do everything that I have to do to make it happen. I know our leadership is absolutely dedicated to doing whatever it takes to make sure that it happens. So we are going to work as hard as we can, pray as hard as we can to accomplish that. And again, I just can't promise anything, but I will tell you, I'm giving you my promise that I'm going to do everything I can do to make it happen. We're working very hard at it.
Let me add a couple more things to that. So first, Michael Miller is a humble individual, so he won't say this, but he was very involved in the accreditation process at Bob Jones University. So he came from, you should just give 1 minute
Sure.
about that, and then I want to add some more things.
Sure, and Bob Jones University was an unaccredited university for 85 years, just chose not to be accredited, but then decided that it was time to do that, just given the current educational environment. And so first achieved national accreditation through TRACS, the Transnational Association, and then regional accreditation through SACS, which is the Southern Association of Colleges and Schools, Commission on Colleges. So I was primarily involved in getting us through the Commission on Colleges through regional accreditation, which is a much more involved, complicated process. So, you know, I've done this, I've been there, I know what needs to be done, I know the people on the commission, I've worked with one of the commissioners, so, you know, I understand what needs to be done, and like I said, I'm committed to making it happen.
Just want to add a little bit more on this point here. So there have been a lot of schools, Bob Jones is one, that, as you just heard, were unaccredited for 85 years, and plenty of people went on to graduate schools and do lots of great things. The accreditation is really the blessing, it's kind of a seal of approval that this peer group gives, but you actually don't technically need it to function. So the thing that you need is the state to give you this degree granting authorization, and we already have that. So that's in the bag. There have been, when I look at the history of the most recent colleges that have gotten started, both in Massachusetts as well as nationally, many of them, Patrick Henry College did this. Some of you have heard of Patrick Henry. They functioned for, I think it was 12 years without accreditation. And plenty of people went on to graduate schools and do lots of things there. I'm confident that with his leadership we'll get there before our students graduate, even though we can't promise it. But it's not, like, grad schools don't even necessarily require it. It's up to them. And if you do well on your GREs and your MCATs and things like that, I mean, they get that in the end it's a label, ultimately, that gets put on a school. It's not necessarily something that is intrinsic to what it means to be a good school.
All right, more questions? Yes, sir.
So what advice would you give to a student who is considering trying to accelerate the time frame, not here, but getting through high school faster and getting into college faster? So getting in through high school in 3 years as opposed to the traditional 4.
I think as long as the student who's coming here meets our academic requirements for admission, I don't think we're going to look at, you know, how long exactly it took for that to happen. As long as they actually meet those requirements and can prove that they have learned what they need to learn and that their test scores are as high as they need to be.
We have about, is it 50% of our class is homeschooled? Is that right?
Just under 48.
48% of our incoming class is homeschooled. We love that, and we want to be hopefully one of the schools in the country to be recognized as a homeschooling friendly place. And obviously homeschooling, you know, I'm a homeschooler, and we get that you can't necessarily document everything to the same level of clarity that you can, or at least perceived clarity that you can through a public school. And we want to be flexible and hire great people. I mean, in the end, we want good people here, and how you got here is less important than who you are.
Yes, ma'am.
Where are your marrieds living? I assume not at the guest.
No, so I live at an apartment. My family and I live in an apartment in Malden, so it's about 6 miles north of here. And in fact, there's 3 students who are married, and all 3 of us live in the same apartment building. One of the students lives right down the hall from me. So yeah, it's actually really turned out to be a really good situation. And I think that will vary per married student. They can find their own housing if they want. The school did help me find this, and so there's flexibility with that.
Was the cost about the same as the dorm living?
Yeah, the financial aid kicks in per student. So after you apply, we also accept sort of a financial aid application, and we grant it on merit and need-based aid. So it's a little different per student.
About academics, I'm wondering for, especially since you've spent a year in college, what's the academic life at Sattler? How is it similar to what you've experienced before, and how is it different?
I would definitely say it's been more rigorous than my previous college experience. But that also wasn't like a full-time year of college. My schedule was probably a little tougher with my previous year of college than this has been. But it's definitely been pretty rigorous. We've had to put a lot of work into the studying, and however, like putting the work into it, I've been able to keep up with my grades as long as you really focus and put your effort into the studying and into the classes. I've been able to keep up, and I would say that's been most about for everybody that we've been able to, as long as we put the effort into it. I don't know if that answers your question.
Can I add on to that as well? So this is something that is a big, you know, I've talked about this, so, but this is the rest, everyone else's benefit here. So I taught at Harvard. I taught organic chemistry for 3 years. I taught biology. I taught at Harvard Medical School, and I taught an undergraduate course in California years ago. So I've taught a lot of classes over the years. And for example, I taught organic chemistry. My class size was 250. And the lights, I still remember, you'd stand up in the front, and you had these bright lights on you, and you'd go like this because you couldn't really see who was in the audience. And they didn't want you to ask questions because it was such a, I mean, how do you take questions from 250 people at a time? They would have these things called sections or rest stations you break up for those questions. But taught it for 3 years. And I will say that the standard model that you see even at good schools like Harvard, another story, a math class, the class had 150 people in it. The average attendance in a typical class, 20. People just weren't even showing up to class. And the guy would just go up there and just prattle on and on for an hour and not even look back at what was going on there. We have a totally different model here. And all of our students know that we really value interaction, and we sometimes call it the Oxford model. Our attendance in my biology class, for example, so if you take we actually, you guys don't know this, we actually log who's there every week. So I can actually see what our attendance is over 98% in terms of per student days. It's actually probably a little closer to 99 than 90, but it's over 98. And I will say that I took biology 27 years ago. I used the same textbook that we're using in this class. They know biology better than I knew biology from my first semester class by far. And it's because, again, I was in this huge class. You couldn't really ask questions. We do a quiz every single class, and they do the quiz and they get their grade when they hit submit at the end of it. So they know how they're doing, and then we go over all the questions. It's a lot of real-time feedback. Man, I look at this thing and I think, like, I wish I had that when I was in college. Like, I would take a quiz, I'd give it, throw it over a wall, 2 or 3 weeks later I'd get it back. I'd kind of forgotten what it was even about because it was three weeks ago. And I can clearly see the value of our model of education, which is much more dynamic and personal and interactive than sitting in a lecture hall with 200 people, taking quizzes, throwing them over a wall, maybe getting a result back 4 weeks later. And like I said, I will confidently say that the average student who's done with our biology class knows biology better than I knew biology when I finished that. And I'm very committed to a high standard of academic pedagogy. I want all of our students to do extremely well when they go on to whatever they do in life, graduate school, med school, what have you. And I think our close, small environment is going to only give them a huge advantage compared to the typical models.
I'll add to that.
Okay.
What he's saying has been drastically different from my previous college to this college experience is how involved the staff are, the faculty are in letting us ask questions, and then encouraging us to also come to them with our questions has been drastically different than my previous college experience, where it was a very big disconnect between faculty and students.
And I was going to ask Timothy, you can chime in on this. What is your interaction like with professors outside of class and when you need help? I know you're sitting next to one of them, but what is it like to interact with them, and how available are they?
So that's been one of the, I think, the biggest blessings I've heard across the board from every student here, is that we're just amazed like how blessed we are to have faculty that we can go talk to almost any time. I know we can email them, they're always responsive. We can talk in class, we can talk after class, we can catch them in the hall, we can catch them at tea time. It's almost unbelievable how much opportunity you have to interact with faculty, and I hope we don't take advantage of it. But that is massively important. It almost couldn't be overemphasized how different that is, I think, than the typical environment a student is going to experience, and I know we're really grateful for it, and I think it will be, it's one of those like little things, X factors they kind of call them, that you just almost can't even figure in, but it's so invaluable.
Any other questions? Yes.
Megan, how many students do you plan to accept for next year's class, and how many applications have you, I'm assuming, coming up on that due date, January, right?
Mid-January.
Have you already got some in? I'm just curious if you've gotten a good response yet.
Yeah, so we're anticipating 30 to 35 students for our next class. Because we're doing a cohort model where all of these students took classes together, we want that experience again for our first two classes, where all of them have taken the exact same classes together. And given that, we want it for the second year, we want that same unity in a cohort model. So 30 to 35, and then the number of applicants that have come in we're almost at that level now of applicants, but I'll let Michael talk about how to track that and how much we can talk about.
Well, yeah, I mean, we definitely, we're just the way high school works. You know, most students aren't really, focusing on applying right now. Some like to get in early, and we've had several early applicants who want to already know right now if they can come to school here. But many, just the reality is, many wait until after the holiday, after Christmas, and then they get down to being busy with it. So yes, we have a good number of applicants right now, and we don't really have a history to go by. So I can't say, well, compared to 2 years ago, we are now there's nothing to compare it to. So, and last year was completely different because it was the first year starting up, so things were very different. But I'm confident after the holidays, we will end up with a very good pool from which we can select the 30 to 35 students.
So one of the other things to say about, Zach mentioned a key term there that you may not know what he meant by that, cohort model. So a cohort model is a model where you take very similar things or nearly identical things for a period of time, and so it's a group experience for particularly the early part of education. So this is different than how most colleges are. Most colleges, you kind of get scattered to the winds your first semester, and I can tell you, having gone to Harvard and MIT and Caltech, when I was an RA at Harvard, I would have to host these study breaks, and my particular hallway had juniors who lived in it. And it never ceased to amaze me how it would be April, and I would be hosting a study break, and two people would come into my room. I just put out snacks on my table, and it would be like, oh, what's your name? My name's Toby. My name is Susan. And I'm thinking, like, you've lived in the same dorm. You're juniors. You don't even know each other's names. And this is not an exceptional experience. Like, often people just have in a big school, they have a very, very small group of friends, which is like usually like 4 to 8 maybe. And then they actually have, paradoxically, they know fewer people. So there's a great line that somebody who else came up with. He says, the larger the school, the fewer people you get to know, and vice versa. The smaller the school, the more people you get to know. And so there's a lot of reasons why we advocate this model. I think it's safe to say that you all know each other, and it won't be this "what's your name" type experience. And imagine how much deeper your relationships are going to be after 4 years than even they are after just one semester. So it's a vastly better model. It's something more similar to what you'd see in like med school or law school, where you actually are taking classes together. Everyone does anatomy, everyone does pathology, and you bond much more in that type of model as well.
All right. I think we are now officially at the end of our time, so thank you very much. If you have other questions, please come up and ask us.